Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Well, my name is Pam Kane, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about finance services delivery. I hope you're all in the right room. Yes? Yes. Cool. All right. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for the feedback that you've been providing through the website and other venues. And we are still working through everything. We don't have everything resolved. We're still working through it, so work in progress. I wanted to let you know that. So I'm hoping to answer some of your questions today, some of the ones that have been posed on the website. And we are definitely going to get into some of the weeds today. So I think, did everyone get a handout of what the jobs look like? Okay. So, good. Anybody not get a packet? Cool. All right. Let's see if I can run this. Questions. You all have questions. These are some of the ones that we've heard. How will this work? How about backfill during transition? Do I have the right skill sets? How will my job change? Will my pay change? How is this funded? Who makes the decisions? When will I know? When I don't? What if I don't take the position? Where would I sit? What are the units? So some of these we can answer today. Some of these not so much. So our agenda for today. Why the change? And I'm going to go back through some of the things that we have talked a little bit about on why the change. We're going to go through what does finance service delivery look like, just to remind you all, and what the finance roles and responsibilities are. I'm going to go through and identify what stays within the unit, and then what goes within the finance services delivery. And then, if we get to it, the draft transition process, and then the next steps. So why the change? So I'm going to go through and reiterate what the Institutional Effectiveness Leadership Team Supergroup addressed in the report just 2 weeks ago. So this is still pretty much fresh off the press, that we are fortunate to have excellent staff and faculty who are extremely dedicated to Iowa State University and the jobs that they do. We want to recognize that we are definitely a lean institution. And our staff and faculty work very hard every day to advance the excellence across the university, and we want to do the same for finance. So it is critical that we provide the right tools, technology, training, and direction to continue to be successful at Iowa State. We are going through a comprehensive modernization effort to upgrade technology. Workday. I keep telling people we're going from the Stone Age, from the green screens that we can't program anymore, to the Jetson age. How many know the Jetsons? Yes, all right, okay. So you know what I mean. We're going to the Jetson age with the Workday technology. You'll be able to do it on your phone. You'll be able to do it from pretty much anywhere in the world. So in doing that, we're also improving our business processes. And we're rethinking how we're organized. And so by taking this time to look at the advantages and the opportunities that this provides to us, we want to build on our employee strengths by redesigning how we deliver services. So for finance, I remind you of comments and concerns that we received about 4 years ago at this time when we had listening sessions about all the administrative systems. The things that, too many rules and regulations, and it's really impossible to stay current on all of those when you only handle some of those things once every 5 years or once every 3 years. Conflicting instructions or information. We heard that there was a lack of consistency within and between departments across campus. We heard that each system routes differently. Remember, in finance, we have at least 5 separate systems, okay? We need information available at the same place, one-stop shop. We also heard that we need regular, enhanced, and targeted training for the finance policies, procedures, regulations, and things. And they wanted us to be innovative in how we approach finance. And they wanted to have great customer service. But they wanted us to be accountable for what we were doing across campus. So the goals for financial service delivery, financial services delivery, so if I don't say that, somebody needs to but services, because it's going to provide multiple types of financial services. So, but the first one is to improve faculty and staff experience. And this is for all employees, not just the ones that will be on the finance services centers on those teams, but for faculty and staff across campus. So everyone will get a better experience from the finance side. So improving finance service delivery should create efficiencies in the basic accounting, purchasing, travel, expenses, and grants finance operations. It should be a better balance of workloads, and we should be able to provide consistent and regular training to empower employees to do their job without a lot of layers. Next one is better support the missions of Iowa State and our units. So by providing these tools and technology, we would be able to provide better service, but the tools and technology are not in themselves going to provide the better service. It's the better training of the specialists and the supervisors who would be experts in finance. We'll have improved business processes. So hopefully it's a one touch and done. And then we'll try and maximize all the capabilities of Workday. And we'll have clearer and more timely answers and resolutions for complex problems. And then third goal is to enhance the culture of service. So similar to the above, we want to empower the local support within the units that they're at. So the finance services delivery teams will be within the units that they serve. So the services will be measured using Workday data. So we will have measurements. We're trying to ensure that we're bringing the proper value and added value for the things that you need. And we want to continuously improve. And Workday will let us do that. The Finance Services Centers, okay, this new term, you'll see it on quite the next slide, maybe 3 more slides. But Finance Services Centers is what we're calling them instead of red teams. How's that sound? Instead of red teams, Finance Services Centers. And I don't even know I don't like to do the acronyms because I never remember they get all jumbled. Finance Services Centers. So we want to have great people doing this work. We want to have them empowered to be successful, be able to serve you the way you need to be served, and to have a professional focus for those people and a place for them to rise to the occasion. So like I said before, we'll have different levels of staffing in each of these service centers. We'll have different jobs within those service centers. And we're hoping to improve the employee experience that, the folks are very highly trained in what they do and how they do things, and they know the policies, they know the procedures, and they're able to be there to support you and say, what do you need? And the first answer should always be yes. We'll be able to do that. So, and I did bring my water this time. I'm not sure how many of you were there before, but I get kind of dry mouth, so I'm going to have it right close. So the key features of improved service delivery. And just so you know, I kind of stole this from the stuff that was sent out 2 weeks ago. So if this sounds familiar, it should sound familiar. But we should maintain the knowledge of the missions, for the key features of improved service delivery. The teams have to maintain the knowledge of the units and the missions and the people that they serve. So they have to understand what the needs are, what your obstacles are, and all the things that they can do to help support the units that have not been defined yet. So I know that was a question. Units have not been defined yet, so we're working on it. But the business processes should be completed by the finance specialists who are accountable for their work and provided with the tools and training to exercise good judgment. Then we have the level of service should be measured with high quality, reliable, accurate, consistent, and efficient support provided through the team structure. The processes and policies should be practical, current, and transparent to all involved. So if you see something that the financial services centers are doing that you're unfamiliar with, questions are always going to be answered and as best we can. Let's see. Provide specialists with career paths and opportunities for professional development. Like I said, we're hoping to have a junior or an entry level, junior level, and senior level on all the teams in the most of the job categories that we are looking for. But if you're a unit that has no grants, then you probably wouldn't have a grants finance specialist in your team. But if you have lots of grants, you may have several grants finance specialists on your teams, just to make sure that the workload gets done. Next. So we want to ensure the appropriate balance of staff workloads so that people are able to go on vacation, able, to take maternity leave and not worry about it, and just whatever things happen, if there's we should have the support along the system of the teams that we will have appropriate backup. Support the workload of faculty. And I want to make sure that that is a key feature of the improved service delivery. We want to make sure we serve the faculty also. But that's also serving the staff too, the scientists, and everyone else involved with those units and the direction that they're going. Cost neutral at the institutional level. Just so you know, our institutional budget management team has prepared a spreadsheet to track all the movement of staff. And we'll be able to identify, if staff go from a unit into one of the finance services centers, we'll be able to track all of that, and we'll have all of the finances at least identified and this is for both HR and for finance service centers, and just so we have a tracking device to know how things are going. That doesn't mean it's funded that way, it just means we're tracking it that way, so we at least have that information. And then we're going to develop an advisory structure. So that advisory structure will have reviews from the units that are served. It'll have reviews from the supervisory structure and the specialists that are within those teams. We will have overall performance looked at and the benefits and costs of those improved service delivery centers and the team members that are in them. So, and it's going to be from all sides that we're going to get information on those teams, on their service level, their customer service, how they react to your questions, all of those kind of things. So it'll be a more, I would say, sophisticated input mechanism than we've had in the past for anything like this. Okay, so finance services delivery. So we have been doing a lot, although a lot of it you haven't been seeing because it's behind the scenes. But number one, we have been listening, we have been reading all of your comments and suggestions, but there's a lot of moving parts. So we have had several meetings with the P&S Council leadership. We've been meeting with University Human Resources and the Office of Equal Opportunity on how to transition and what might be an acceptable transition process for the folks that are staying within the units or going into a finance services team. We've had several engagements with there's a committee that was established for operations and finance colleagues. We've had several meetings with them that we've done some exercises on, and these are some of the fiscal officers within some of your unit, and what we've done is put them in smaller groups and said, okay, how would you solve this problem? How are we going to transition these folks? And what are the things we need to think about? So, I mean, we've been doing some brainstorming and some things from the finance side just to see what kind of things we need to do and we need to keep at the top of our mind. So we looked at ways to populate the new finance specialist roles and what they should look like. And then we talked about job fairs or job fair. I mean, I think you'll see that on one of our future slides. If there's something different that we need to do other than these town hall meetings where there's because this, for the most part, is going to be a presentation of information, okay? But if job fair is one where it's a question and answer. So you can ask questions all along the way, and it's just set up to provide you more in-depth information. Let's see. The institutional budget management team has also been working on what the funding mechanisms look like, with our budget model that we have on how that's going to look and what that's going to be different and how we can be very transparent to the entire campus on how things are funded differently. And so they're already starting work on that because it will be different. But we just want to make sure that you have, and we have enough information that we can share when we get there, that you can input and say, well, this is not going to work here, this will work here, but what about? So that's still coming in the future, but we started. We've held a half-day work session to gather input on these job duties. Like the ones that you have in your hands are a synopsis of some of the job duties. But what I'm going to go through today is many more details than you'll have in your handout. So, but just to talk about them, just to, to give you ideas of what things we are thinking about will be in those actual job-specific duties. So you've seen, we've got those job descriptions out there. We've also posted the Associate VP for the Finance Support Services. So that would be, and we posted both the HR and the finance on the same day, and we're evaluating candidates right now. I think to date we have 19 applicants for the AVP job. And we hope to post the finance manager jobs next week. So, or this week, okay, even sooner. So the finance managers, I think right now we're talking about maybe 3 finance managers. At this point in time, we're not sure, but I think it's at least 3. And then we're trying to combine both worlds, the best of both worlds. The decentralized is generally more customer-focused and mission-driven. We want to combine that into our finance services centers. But then the centralized generally has economies of scale and standardized practices. So we want to combine those two things to make sure that it's the best possible world that we can get. So now here is a simplified version. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing, but it is simplified because we have one unit there, and we're working with UHR to identify those units. And so whatever the units are going to be identified, they will have a finance services center team. So, and those teams may include, well, most of them will all include the finance services specialist. Some may or may not include the grants finance service specialist, or grants finance specialist, and then procurement and expense specialist. So, like I said, all of these finance service centers will be right sized for the units that they're serving. So if we have, depending on how those units get defined, we're still going to be able, because there's so much finance work within the university, I think we'll be able to right size whatever is needed for each of the units. Finance services manager, like I said, we're going to post that this week, and hopefully we'll have 3 of those. The AVP for finance support services was posted, but the solid lines, we can go to the next. There's a definition on the next slide, but solid lines are direct reporting positions. The red dotted line is where the, where's mine? Okay. I'll just go to the next slide. How's that? The red dotted line is the support and customer service alignments. So if you see where the finance services centers and the red dotted line, they serve the units. But the input, the dotted lines all over the place from the president, SVP units, the unit, and they go every which way. So there should be a lot of open communication for this to work appropriately and to work effectively for all of the units out there. So the dotted lines just reflect the evaluation. Let's see. The dotted lines helps define performance criteria, contributes to and consulted in annual performance evaluations of the Finance Services Center individuals. They're involved in the hiring, but the black solid line is where the actual hiring manager is. But the black dotted line is supposed to help with the communication and ensuring a culture of service and accountability. All right. More water, sorry. All right. Any questions on the previous slide? Since it is, all it is less stuff. Yes, Joy. Yeah.
You're thinking maybe 3 possible finance service managers.
Yes.
So if you don't have the units set yet, could that number change?
It could. I don't
Okay.
think it'll go any
And-
lower than 3. How's that?
Okay.
So
That-
I'm
that
thinking
works.
3 right now, but it could be 4.
Okay.
It depends on the number of units that are identified. Yep. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, Ron, oh. More water.
Sorry, who had their hand up? You.
So for those who work as specialists in the Finance Services Center, are they to view the Finance Service Manager as their first line supervisor day to day? They have a question, they need help with something, they go to that manager?
Well, hopefully within each of these service centers, there will be like an entry level, a junior level, and a senior level. And maybe the senior level might be the supervisor for the teams.
Okay.
And then there might be 3 teams for every finance service manager. Okay, does that help? Okay. But I'm envisioning for this to work properly that the finance services centers will be meeting with their units on a regular basis, to address what they need, what things are coming up, if there's grants that they've sent out and had, they're not awarded yet, but they have specific items like one kind of equipment that only can be bought in one place. They'll be able to start those processes early on rather than waiting for a grant to be awarded. So they have at least an idea of what's coming up. Other questions? Cool. All right. Okay. Now we get to finance roles and responsibilities. All right, now still know that those are drafts. We're still working on them. And so we will take all the input you want to give us on those draft descriptions of jobs. They're not PDs, they're not job profiles, they're just right now descriptions of jobs, okay? And so we're working with UHR to identify the qualifications and the way that skill sets might work. You may not have done X, but you have all the skill sets necessary to maybe be a procurement and expense specialist. Or you may have experience that you've done grants, and so you may be able to go into the grants finance specialist role. But you may not have technical things that in your resume that lead you to some of that, but you have the job skill sets. So I just want to know that on this first go round and working with UHR, that we're going to try and make sure that anybody wants to be in a finance services center team and you have a real desire, we're going to go through a process to evaluate your job skills and not necessarily a resume, as you may like we have always in the past. We're going to do a kind of different transition process with UHR. And it's a one-time deal because of the major changes. All right. And so what we're trying to do with less detail in these descriptions of jobs is to be more flexible right now until we figure out what kind of numbers we need for each of the units, what kind of skill sets we need. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible, but we're committed to internally filling these positions for all that want to go. So that's our commitment to you. So now I'm going to go through. Oh, I missed a page. Okay. This was from Christy's presentation also. There are proposed job profiles on the worksite website. So you have them in hand right now, but for those that are streaming, you can get it online at the worksite website. And then under the tab, I had to look for it the other day, so that's why I put under the tab, welcome to the worksite, and then improved service delivery. So you have to go down a few layers. Again, they're still draft. And the class and comp review that is going on right now will not be implemented for these new classifications right now. So, all right. Okay. This is where I want to spend more time. So this is for all finance specialists, okay? And I've got one for each of the other ones, but this is in general for all finance specialists. What's going to happen within the finance team is on the right, and what I believe will stay within the units is on the left-hand side. So going down within the unit, all the strategic direction for a unit will stay within the unit. All the financial decisions of the unit will stay within the unit. And all the general administration of the unit will stay within the unit. So on the finance team, we want all financial specialists to provide exceptional customer service and strong communication skills. So that means if, and I got to tell you, from being an accountant, accountants are not really known for being, be able to communicate really well because we have our set things that we do. And so for the accounting folks in the room, I'm not dishing it because I'm one too. But that's a comment that I've heard over and over again in my significant long time being an accountant, that we have to work on our communication skills. So that means that in our finance teams, we're going to be training customer service and communication on a regular basis. And so that's when we need feedback from the units. If there's any issues with customer service, that needs to be brought to the finance service managers, and then that will be taken care of in the training side of and the evaluation of individuals. So the finance team, also want them to be proactive in identifying your financial needs of the units and then solving the finance problems. That's what they're going to be specialized, so they're going to be able to solve some of those problems on a more regular basis and in less time. They're going to assist the units in understanding their financial activities. They're going to ensure finance and accounting compliance, and they're going to interface with the central finance departments on more complicated matters. So hopefully all of those things that are within the finance team leaves the units with more time to do the things that are more strategic for their units. So think of it as bookends. And I got this from a friend of mine. So the units decide what they need to obtain, who needs to travel, and what are appropriate activities for their grants. The finance specialists are in the middle, and they're trained to do the detailed work and accomplish those required activities. And then the units give their final approval. So the units would be on the bookends. And so the finance teams are kind of working their magic in the middle, but it's based on what the needs of the units are and the approvals for those units. Okay. Any questions? Cool. So, and now this one, left side will look fairly similar, but for within the unit, for a finance service specialist, these are more the accounting types that are doing the journal entries within Workday, because Workday is going to be an accrual-based system, not a cash basis. So we'll have to do a lot of journal entries that require debits and credits, and a really good understanding of how that impacts the accounting pieces, because within Workday there's a lot of work tags. Most of those work tags had been in our current system for KFS, our quality financial system. All of those parameters were within an account number. Okay, so if you look at whatever account number was set up, it had like 21 different parameters behind that account number. Now we're going to have to identify the work tags and where they fit within each of those. So we won't have one account. We'll have the work tags to make sure that we get it in the proper fund account, proper resource type, proper all the different work tags. And I can't remember them right now, but we've got a lot of work tags in Workday. So, but still for the finance specialist, the financial decisions, the decisions are still made within the units. The budget and planning and analysis and future planning for that unit is still made within the unit. The approval of transactions and adjustments, still all made in the units. And the financial health and reporting of the unit are still for the unit. Okay, they need to make sure that they maintain the financials, the health of that unit. But the finance team is there to help them. So the finance team, they're supposed to facilitate the value-added accounting and non-grant financial, because we'll have a grants finance specialist. This one is basically for all the other finances other than grants. They'll set up and modify payroll and benefit costing allocations. In Workday, there is a process that because we have so many people that their salaries are allocated to different accounts right now, well, we're going to have costing allocations for some of them up front. So to make that job easier within Workday, because when you go through and you say, this person's going to be split 50-50 or 40-60, whatever you want that person's salary split between different types of funding sources, you can set it up front, and that goes through this process pretty easily. But if you change that, how many change funding sources more than once a year for salary? Okay, okay. So what happens in Workday is you'll need financial specialists to help with, because all of those changes are not just in the costing allocation, but they're all in the debits and credits in the accounting world, so because of the accounting system that we have. And so you're going to have to understand where they were, and if you have to go and adjust it from the back end, say it's 2 months later that you go back and adjust it, it all has to flow through an accounting, the true accounting with the debits and credits on where things get debited, where they get credited. So that's what these finance specialists are going to be trained to do, is to use Workday, handle Workday so that it gives you the right information, it gets those people's salaries allocated where they need to be. Any financial adjustments, because it's still a full accrual system, there may be monthly closing entries that need to be done that are unique and distinct and can't be automated. They will be doing that. Any other kind of accounting journal entries, say, well, it got charged to one account, but now it has to be charged to another. Say it's a piece of equipment, and it was on the balance sheet, and so now it has to go through all of these ramifications of all of the adjusting journal entries. Because we're doing, for all of, the way Workday is, we've set up business units that will have balance sheets. So they'll have balance sheets that identify what their claim on cash is, their inventory, their equipment, their assets that might be there, their debt service that might, okay, but that's not for normally what we've been doing on campus. So this is a new and unique type of thing, but we'll need financial specialists to do those adjusting journal entries for getting it from anything that's corrected. Those will be the bugaboo, but the ones with the just the equipment, that'll go through a whole process of, if you buy a piece of equipment that needs to be capitalized on the financial statements, guess what? It goes through a process, and these folks need to make sure it gets to the right equipment specialist or capital asset specialist to make sure it gets on the right balance sheet for the unit. So we want to make sure it's on, say if it's College of Ag rather than College of Engineering, we want to make sure that it rolls up to the right business units within Workday. So ensuring accuracy for ledger accounts. Okay, again, with our balance sheets and operating statements, we're going to have ledger accounts that'll show tuition revenues, but at the business unit level. If you're a department under a college, most of the time you will not have a balance sheet and an operating statement. You'll have a spending authority, similar to what we have now, but our budgets will be different, because right now, the way we do budgets is we give you cash in your account that says you have $10,000 to spend, instead of, in Workday, you will get a budget that says $10,000, and then we'll have reports that have budget and actuals. And so you'll have to monitor on a regular basis what those differences are. So it's going to be different than what you know now. But on those operating statements, we'll have ledger accounts, things will roll up. So we may have domestic travel, foreign travel, meals, lodging, whatever. Those will roll up into ledger accounts for maybe travel. But so we'll have spend categories that'll identify all the different things. But some of the Workday terminology is going to be very different than what you know today. And so these are the folks that are going to help you with understanding all of that within Workday. And then, again, monitors compliance with finance policies and procedures. And then there's a lot of places where we have to upload financial transactions. These would be the folks that are helping do those financial integrations. Any questions on this finance services specialist? Is that too much? Too much detail? Yes, okay.
the top line item under within finance team, non-grant financial support. So that would be like, your 202 cost recovery accounts and your 701 accounts, or what? Could you
It could be
expand a little bit
all of
on
those,
that?
the 202s, 290s, yeah.
Okay.
We have some auxiliary operations on campus that we might, yeah,
So basically, it would be everything except anything that starts with a 4?
pretty much.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And just in the new world, we won't have 400 accounts. We won't have 200 accounts, sorry. Yeah, those would be funding types. Other questions? All right, so I'm gonna make sure. Cool. You ready for me to move on to the next one? Okay. I had a few. So again, this is procurement expense. So procurement expense specialist, okay? But the unit still identifies the needs of the unit. So if you need something purchased, I'm gonna change my example. If you need a table instead of a chair, I got caught one time, I was talking about buying a chair and they said, well, departments don't buy their chairs. They have their chairs. I'm like, no, different kind of chair. So I need to talk tables, because you wanna buy a table. So, and you want to buy a specific kind of table. And you say, well, I want X, Y, and Z, and I need it to fit in this space here, and I want da, 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 da. Well, guess what? You go to the procurement and expense specialist, and they're the ones that are there to help you. They can look for what things fit your criteria. They'll come back to you and say, I found these 4 that meet your criteria. Which one do you want? All right, but they'll be doing the evaluation, or they'll be going into the different contracts we have. I found out, what was it, probably 2 months ago, we have only 2 contracts that procurement has that have tables in them, okay? But we have hundreds of contracts, but it's still, we're gonna train these folks to know where those things are, to know how to look for the best price, and you'll just tell them what you need, and they're the ones that are gonna go look for it. They're going to have a deep understanding and knowledge of our university policies, external regulations, workday business processes, and work tags. So that they're going to ask you, well, what sources of funding are you going to use for this? Blah, 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 all the different things that they need to understand so that they can put it through the right business process. And actually some of those, all the business processes have been mapped out for all of these. So if you go in and say, I want X, it'll go to these people. And they're going to determine the best method for obtaining these goods and services. And you're not going to have to fumble around and say, because I know there's certain things that I'm like, I have not done this forever, and it's been 5 years since I bought something like this, and I have no idea where to start looking. Yes, I can go here, but I'm not sure what's the best way to do this. But if you have somebody that can handle this for you, I'm going to love it, I got to tell you. And then they also work with central finance departments on complicated travel, procurement, and payment needs. And when there's things that don't go through the regular procurement process, there's ad hoc payments. If you pay participants for research, okay, that's a different kind of payment processing within Workday. So these folks are going to help with identifying all the ways that all those things can be taken care of. They're going to help you with procurement of any type, anywhere across the university. They're going to support the new travel cards, the P cards, assist with allowance advances for travel advances. Then I have a whole laundry list of other things we've identified. I'll have to read it. So for travel, just so you know, in Workday, expenses is synonymous to travel. It's like I'm having a hard time because in my world, expenses are a lot of different things in addition to travel. But for travel, the specialist can create initial travel authorizations. They can assist business travelers, faculty, staff, and students for traveling for business purposes with cash advances, airfare, hotel, car rentals, reservations, making travel arrangements for individuals or groups. They can be specific activities related to traveling abroad. they're going to be trained on how to do all the travel and all the things that are necessary. Because when you travel abroad, there are certain things you need to know about your cell phone, your computers, what kind of risks there are in the places that you're going. So those will be the folks that are going to be trained on all of that so that they can help you with doing that. They can initiate expense reports on behalf of employees. They can review expense reports prepared by employees for compliance and allowability. They can reconcile travel card transactions with expense transactions. They can follow up on unreconciled travel cards and unpaid travel cards. They can assist and follow up on outstanding travel advances. They can assist in chargebacks of unallowable costs. They can, for procurement, let's see. They can help with IT purchases and working with IT, as well as equipment and supplies. They can initiate purchases in SIBI or ISU contracts, non-SIBI requisitions, place orders from central storage or chem stores, assist with procuring, paying for supplies, and services that are not based on a P card, requisition, or payroll transaction. They can, receive goods and services on behalf of the units, create requisitions for transactions on behalf of employees, reconcile procurement card transactions, assist in chargebacks of unallowable costs and reconciliations through university receivables, reconcile P card transactions on behalf of the P card holders, and assist units with documenting conflict of interest vendors. Yes.
I'm wondering, will administrators or staff at the local level still be able to procure? Will administrative staff or other employees at the local level still be able to procure items?
Yes.
Even without having to go through?
Yes.
The specialist?
Yes.
Okay, so will people who travel be able to make their own reservations for a
Yes.
university car? None of that will change?
Not if you don't want it to.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that people want to continue doing themselves. They feel more comfortable doing their own travel arrangements. That's fine. But these folks will be able to help if you have questions, especially, traveling abroad is if you haven't done it, it's a lot more difficult than just traveling domestically. But no, you'll still be able to do your own travel claims. You'll be able to schedule your own travel. Yes, all of that. Yes.
So the reallocating of P cards,
Yes.
does that stay in the unit now, or is that going over to finance?
It goes to the finance specialist. Yeah.
Okay. Because that's a big stack of what I do right
Yeah.
now. Okay.
To the travel question, but existing SIBI shoppers and approvers will still continue?
If they want to, yes.
Okay.
And these specialists, if you have some issues or you can't find X, Y, and Z, then instead of calling around campus and trying, well, how'd you do this, how'd you do this, go to them. They're going to be implanted with all the units, so yeah, it'll be an easier, your one-stop shop.
How do these functions, like when you talked about ordering furniture, when we're ordering furniture for office, we often work with FP&M and get someone from their office to come over and lay it out. Will there be changes in the Office of Procurement and the Office of FP&M that will minimize our unit or our department needs to go through them to get some of this stuff, or will it still function in the same vein?
I'm hoping we can improve it with this, but I'm not making any promises right now, but we're going to have to work through that. We have not ventured that far yet. But good question. Yep, down here, Ellen. Turn around, she'll throw it. Oh, you want, okay.
So I'm the one who when the P cards, they come to me, and a lot of times there's incorrect account numbers. So I just need a warm fuzzy that when they go to these specialists, they're gonna know what accounts we use.
Okay, but think of the bookends. Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, think of the bookends that
That
they'll
helped.
tell us what, they'll tell the finance specialist teams what they want to order. The finance teams will do the work, and it goes here for the approval. It goes back to the unit for the approval. So that bookend that's where you'll see if it's correct or not. If not, you send it back to the finance services specialist and say, okay, this is the wrong funding source, it needs to be X, Y, and Z. But then they'll be able to do the accounting part behind the scenes so that makes sure all of the correct journal entries are done for modifying those costs.
You mentioned about the units still have right to make the purchase by themselves, right? Correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said you mentioned about the units still have a right to make purchase by themselves.
Yes.
And then once they got the receipt, they will pass down to the finance team. Am I correct? What if the purchase was not done appropriately?
It'll
So-
probably kick back to one of the finance specialists to work through that with you. If it's not done
My point
appropriately.
is the purchase has been made.
Oh, okay.
So how did that be prevented?
Prevented the first time, probably not, but maybe in the future. Because those are some of the things for compliance aspects that they'll be looking for, and so will central departments will be looking for compliance. And if those are things that we need to work with the units on, we'll be proactive in looking and going to those units and saying, how can we help you? This is done this way, and this is the way it needed to be done, but we'll help you through that. But, I mean, if it's done and, yeah, there's not much you can do to change it if it's already been done.
What's the role of the cost center manager in all of this?
To me, the cost center manager are the approvals for that other bookend. Okay, the cost center manager is the approval on the costs from those cost centers.
Is it a goal to have, so let's say that I want to work with the procurement specialist to get reimbursement for a trip or to plan a trip. Will there be consistency across the units and how long that takes to get done? Like right now, I process a travel in one day. Someone gives me a travel, I'll do it for them. They get done, it gets done quickly. Will there be consistency across units or metrics in how fast it takes to get some of those things done?
Yes, there absolutely will be. Those are some of the metrics talking about what we can identify in Workday, because Workday has everything that, an audit trail for everything comes in the system. So when they get it, it'll be marked in the system so we can track all of that with Workday. Okay.
P-card.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't see you.
Over here.
Here.
You said that P-card reallocations would be done by the procurement expense specialist. What about SIBI? Will those be processed, when they come through and
yes.
assign?
They can all be processed by the finance teams.
So did you say that they can be?
They can, but if there's certain people that want to do their own SIBI,
Okay,
yes.
Okay.
And then the cost center manager would be the approval on that.
okay.
So that would still be within the unit.
All right.
So say if somebody says, I know exactly what I want, it's on SIBI, I'm going to go to SIBI, purchase it, it still will be routed through Workday to the cost center manager for approval from those funds
Okay,
within the unit. And it may totally bypass the finance team.
okay.
Add to that, if it was on a grant, then what happens?
Then it goes through the grant finance specialist. If it's on a grant, it would go through a grant finance specialist. And we
So-
haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
I'll take that one next.
Pam?
Yes. Oh, no.
I know that a lot of things are still in transition, and so if this question can't be answered, that's totally fine. But just looking at a scenario, my current position, probably 90% of what I do falls into the finance team now. Let's say I don't want to move to a finance team, and I know we're not looking at eliminating positions. What options am I left with?
And those are for your units to decide.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, HR will be working with transition teams and with each of the units on the movement or lack of movement of people. Yeah.
And when will the units be decided?
Soon, I hope. But I know HR is working on them. And just so you know, finance, I think, has a much larger base of employees for the finance service teams. And HR has a smaller group. So we're trying to get just one set of units. And so I think it's important that HR gets theirs set up on what their units will look like. And then we can map most of our finance things to the units that they've identified. That's the game plan right now. We're working with UHR to do that, but so say, you know, I'm just going to throw a number out. Don't hold me to this. Say they define 12 units, okay? And if 12 units are there, then for the finance teams, we're going to morph our teams to make sure that we serve those same 12 units. But like I said, we may have some without any grants, finance specialists, but most of them will all have procurement expense specialist as well as finance specialist in them because of the accounting aspects of it. Yes?
One of the questions that came up is cost center. We've heard that a couple of times. Can you explain that term?
Cost center. That's a new term in Workday on that all of the costs revolve around. And so the base level of costs, so say you have, say you work with 5 different accounts right now, account numbers in KFS. And in Workday, it may come up to one cost center because say it's, I don't know, Department A, and you have 5 that you work with right now accounts. But in Workday, you may have one cost center with a lot of work tags that refer to those 5 accounts that you've been working with in KFS. Because, like I said, behind every single one of those accounts, there were like 21 parameters because that identified whether or not it was, for NACUBO reporting, it was a functional, it was an instruction, it was research, it was ... But those were all behind each of those account numbers. But in Workday, they will be work tags. You know, say it's general fund dollars, that's a work tag. You know, it'll be, I can't remember the terms right now, but there's gift grant and institutional resources. And so if it's being spent from, say, one of our special appropriation accounts, you'll have to use that work tag. Say it's Ag Experiment Station. That's a separate appropriation from the state of Iowa to Iowa State. And so that'll be a work tag for that type of funding source. And then it might be research, it might be whatever, but all of those work tags have to be put on to that actual transaction. Yes?
So who is the cost center manager then?
The one that's in charge, so if you were in charge of those 5 accounts before and approving the costs that went through those 5 accounts, then you would probably be the cost center manager on those. Or the departments or the colleges can restructure to figure out maybe they want 5 cost center managers instead of 25 cost center managers. But it's up to the departments to decide, and I know they've been going through some different exercises to identify the cost centers and who those managers would be. So, but that's being worked on right now. Okay. SUPORG is a different structure than cost center manager. Okay, supervisory organizations is the HR hierarchy, you know, on who reports to whom and things. Cost center manager rolls up a different way. So cost centers are unique to the business units that they're in. And so if you have, let's just say you have 5 cost centers for, and I'm going to pick on, who should I pick on? Economics. I'll pick on economics, that you have 5 cost centers for economics, and then it rolls up to a department of economics, and then it rolls up to the College of LAS, all right? So they may have one manager for those 5 cost centers, one cost center manager, but they could have 5 cost center managers, but depending on how they set up their cost centers. But still, even if you have, if it's still in economics, those will still roll to the economics department, and then it'll still roll up. So the hierarchy for costing is different than the hierarchy for HR. So they're 2 separate hierarchies.
Okay, so I am currently doing pretty much 100% of the procurement expense specialist position. And my question is, am I going to need to reapply for this position? And then if not, or could my job title change?
Applying, I think what we're going to try and do is do a interest survey so that every employee across campus, they can either say, yes, they want to be considered, no, they don't want to be considered, or maybe, for any of the finance specialist teams. And I think we're doing the same thing with HR. And so it's basically what the interests of the employees are. And so that's where we're going to start. And so for that first go-round, that's why we had to have a special UHR and OEO transition document, because it's outside the normal process for getting people into jobs. And so, but it's a one-time deal that we're going to do it one time and say, okay, you may have X, Y, and Z. You've been doing these things but qualifications require X, Y, and Z. Well, that may be thrown out because you have skill sets that would allow you to be in that job. So it's kind of, this is going to be a really unique experience. But we have a plan to kind of adjust that as we go. So. Does that portion of it, the portion where we're deciding who's really there? Interest survey, it would be, and I don't know if everybody heard that, but the question was, when will that start? Well, we're trying to start talking to the units in December for the finance side because there are so many people. And we want to make sure that you have enough information to fill out that survey. And so if this is not enough information from this town hall, then, if we do a job fair or something that, you'll be able to ask more questions, then we want to do that. We want to make sure you're comfortable with whatever decision you want to do. So if you're not comfortable unless you know more information, then we want to give you more information. But we want to work with you to do all of that.
So, Pam, hopefully I'm the only one in the room, but I think where you lost me was when you start talking about cost center manager, and it doesn't show up on your map or anything. Is that an existing job in a department that somebody's already doing and doesn't change, or does it fall somewhere in all of this?
The cost center managers are normally, on our diagram, I'll go back to the diagram. Cost center managers would be in the units. So pretty much all cost centers will be in the units. Yeah. So and they're the fiscal officers, they're the folks that are doing the approvals right now. So all the approvals stay within the units. And so in my mind, all the cost center approvals will stay within the units.
I think we have somebody over there.
Oh. Where? Oh,
Yes. Okay,
sorry,
hi. So how will it be determined, or who will be determining who receives the survey, basically? If a position is one that it's determined they should do that?
I mean, we were originally talking about sending the surveys to only those that touch the current finance systems. But then I've heard some other people that say, well, I really don't touch anything right now, but I'd like to at least show my interest. So my hope is to send it broadly across campus and not target just those that have been doing it.
There's a question over there.
Hi. So I do a lot of stuff with study abroad sorts of transactions. So there's going to be the P cards and all that, like travel expense, et cetera. But there's also wire transfers and foreign drafts, things like that. Where do those types of things fall?
In my mind, they'll fall on the finance specialist teams.
Okay.
Because with those wires, there's different things that are going to happen within Workday that'll have to be the accounting side of all of that.
Okay. Is that under the procurement side, with which?
Well, I think it'll be split.
Split. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. With the wire transfers and all that kind of. I think that'll be more of a finance specialist rather than a procurement specialist.
Just clarify.
Oh, over there. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No problem. If we go back to the slide with the procurement specialists.
Yep.
There you go. Okay. So in discussing, Pam, you talked about how some of the ability will still rest within the unit, but others you can use the specialist.
I would assume the goal is that we want to work towards all these specialists. I mean, how is it determined if you're going to keep it in-house or not with your business practice?
I can give you an example in travel, all right? The way Workday is currently set up, an individual can submit their own travel expenses, all right? But you have to be, you have to have the role of expense specialist, procurement expense specialist to actually do it for someone else. So, if person A wants to give it to their assistant, but they're not a specialist, they'll take it to the finance team to do the travel. If they don't want to do it themselves, then it has to go to a person that has actually got the security role of a procurement expense specialist.
Thank you.
Okay.
That answered my question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I forgot my question. Megan.
Okay.
Where does accounts receivable fall into all of this? You don't want to answer that?
No, I don't answer that because currently accounts receivable has not been brought into Workday because of the student side of it. We haven't done student yet. So they are staying pretty much where they are right now. And we're not changing much of accounts receivable other than the folks will, on the finance specialist teams, will have to work with accounts receivable to do whatever they need to collect stuff. But that sits outside of Workday. So, but I'm not sure their specific things are going to change. But there'll be more interaction with the finance teams and accounts receivable.
Okay, so for instance, our student banquet, we have monies for that run through accounts receivable. So, I mean, will that stay within the unit or will that go to a
Which piece of it?
Well, that would be the payment, the student payment for the banquet. So, like say there's $10 to attend the banquet,
Right. And I'm not sure of that one right now. I mean, one of the things we've talked about is having the finance teams working on conference planning, working with conference planning and management to be the interface for some of the units to do that.
Okay.
So that particular question, I'm sorry, I can't answer right now.
So I know right now there's a lot of different systems that we use and they sort of talk to each other sometimes, blah, blah, blah. With Workday and the student side not being enacted yet, is there still going to be some communication with Workday with what we need from the student side? Or is it going to be more difficult or less difficult than it is right now?
I don't think it'll be more difficult. It'll just be different.
Okay.
I mean, we're working to integrate downloads from accounts receivable on student information that needs to go in the financial system because we're implementing finance and human capital management for Workday right now. And when we implement students, it'll have a different finance system for student collections and those kind of things. It'll have a lot of different modules for student financial aid, some of those. Those are all being maintained right now outside of Workday and will be funneled in with an integration from accounts receivable. So that'll still stay in the ADIN system for now until we get Workday student in. Oh, no more questions. Okay, cool. We will move on to grants. Grant finance specialist. All right, so if we continue with the left side being within the unit, for a grant finance specialist, the unit will still identify their needs for the grants. They'll do the grant applications. They'll be responsible for all the programmatic grant activities within the unit, and then the financial decisions for the unit. So if they want this expenditure to be on this grant, it's still the decision of the unit on where those grant funds get spent. So those all stay within the unit. So on the finance teams, again, we're trying to have facilitate value-added grant-related finance activities and services. And that means hopefully that all of the grant awards that get done, and maybe they can even help during the development of those grant awards because they know these grant finance specialists will know the ins and outs of the federal federal regulations, federal policies and procedures. Hopefully they'll be trained in the specific grants. If you have USDA grants, or you have NIH grants, or you have DoD grants, they'll be trained in the specifications of each of those federal departments. So they'll have that deep knowledge and understanding. They'll know the grant processes within Workday, because there's a lot of different things within Workday with all the work tags for all the grants and how they're set up in Workday, and all the financial reporting needs. Hopefully they will be the ones interfacing with the Workday side of it so that you can get the information that you need from the system. And if not, they can work with the reporting folks within IT to develop reports that may be special need for your particular grant. But we have a lot of different reports currently within the grant system, but there's a lot of different things that roll into, and it's a full accrual accounting system. So any changes made on a grant still has to go through those journal entries with debits and credits, and with all the different work tags. So because some of those grant work tags, if you've got different components of a grant, that might be set up in different work tags. And so the finance specialist is going to have to know how you've set up all of your grant accounting, and they're going to be working with you to make sure that you're putting the right expenses towards those grants. So they'll also be helping you with the most appropriate way to obtain the goods and services from the grant, based on the grant funding, and provide whatever financial actions that you need, including grant payroll and grant costing. And that's going to be so similar to the finance specialist. This role will have to have a full understanding not only of the grants, but they'll have to have a full understanding of the accounting aspect. So they're going to have to be trained in accrual accounting so that when you do make your changes from grant A to grant B from payroll, that all of those things still go through the debits and credits for the accounting side of it to get into the right aspects of the grant financing. And so let me see. I have a long list of things here for grants. They'll initiate requests for payroll cost allocations or payroll adjustments. Let's see, including appropriate splits and correct work tags for costing. They'll approve completed payroll allocations and payroll adjustments. They'll run the reports, proactively help manage or help the units manage the costing and ensure payroll updates hit in the proper payroll run. They will review the earnings and actual reports to manage allocations. They will work on it can also be brought in the effort certification through Workday, cost sharing process for grants, work with units, document obligations for cost sharing, ensure that cost sharing work tags are set up and applied correctly to transactions, because it's all transaction based in the accounting world, and all the work tags have to be on at pretty much at the start, otherwise there's a lot of corrections. Maintain the documentation of third-party cost-sharing contributions, review reports of cost-sharing by award, help with the award closeout processes, and working with SPA, Sponsored Programs Accounting. Let's see, work with unit-level grants, contacts, request no cost extension or additional time or additional funding, reviews the last 90 days of expenditures for unallowables. I mean, these are a lot of things that will be in this grant finance specialist. Let's see, works with SPA to resolve any issues such as subaward invoices received, all payments from sponsors, all costs posted, relieves obligations, deliverables were completed, resolve unspent balances, overspent balances, works with SPA to assist with final financial reports as needed. They'll work with the audit side of it to make sure that transactions are reviewed. Let's see, they'll provide budget support as much as the unit wants them to. They can monitor the budget to actual expenses and help the units stay in compliance with their grants. They can monitor key changes in personnel, reductions. Reductions of more than 25% on a federal award change request directly in research.gov, request to OSPA, OIPTT, change in project scope, change in programmatic scope, all the financial compliance that goes with any of those. Let's see. There's a lot of child-parent relationships in Workday. And so the child-parent relationships, for grants is kind of extensive, and so they will have to understand all the implications of those child-parent relationships within Workday. They'll review amendments and rebudgets in Workday for completeness and accuracy. Let's see. They'll work through travel reimbursements that are on grants, procurement that's on grants, equipment that's on grants, and the monitoring of those and the tracking of those. Let's see. Subawards, let's say obtains written approval from the PIs on the grants for documentation, financial transactions. So they have a lot of expanded duties, and they're very targeted for grants. So, questions? Yes.
Hey, Pam, I don't so much have a question as a lot of concerns regarding this grant finance specialist. And those are fundamentally related to the bullet points here and here, I feel like are vastly underestimating the amount of work. Some things that are listed as a bullet point on this example of a duty.
Those are very condensed job, descriptions.
Those are entire positions, like a half of a position to maintain financial oversight of grants for a specific cost center. That's at least one person job if we're talking about a cost center. And several more of the bullet points have similar concerns for me, such as deep knowledge of understanding of all broad knowledge of state federal funding regulations on DOD to NSF to all of that. That's a career's worth of information that we're asking out of these people. And I think the way that they are thrown in together is problematic.
Okay. Point taken.
I just wondered, if there was an audit done, would responsibility for a finding flow back to a central deposit, flow back to the unit or the specialist that worked on if there was a grant specialist that made a mistake on a grant, there's a finding, that money has to be paid back. Is that ultimately the responsibility of the unit then, or is it going to be the responsibility of Iowa State?
I'm not sure I can answer that right now.
Hi, Pam. So I also had a question about some of the things you mentioned as you were just rolling off that maybe weren't necessarily bulleted here. Specifically, no-cost extensions, program scope changes, amendments to awards. Those are a lot of things that are handled within the unit as part of the grant application. So I'm wondering, I kind of agree with Stacy that you're trying to merge too much together and wrap it all in this nice little package.
And it's all the finance aspects of those. So if you go in and do a grant award change, the unit might do that, but the financial implications of that have to go through a grant finance specialist to get it in the system, because it's the accounting, and the award system within Workday is kind of the overarching control of the finance aspects of those awards within Workday. And so all the applications and all the things would be the unit's responsibility, but then they have to work with the grants finance specialist to make sure that all of those financial activities have been modified and put into the financial accounting system correctly. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. So Sarah wants me to make sure that the role of OSPA does not change in this. This is only the financial aspects that hit the Workday system. Behind you, and then one here.
I was just wondering about the salary. I was looking at this. If the position I'm in, let's say I'm in a position where I'm a 513, and I decide I want to apply for the procurement expense specialist, and that only goes up to 509, is that going to affect my salary? Do I have to take a pay cut to take that position?
And there was a document sent out last week that they're working through that on the EO and the UHR transition.
Okay, thank you.
Ron.
I've got an open P36 finance position, and I want to explain to the people how this all works. So here's what I heard today. Make sure I'm right. And this also ties to career progression. So we've got P30 to 34s that'll be inputting our staff's travel, and they will be reporting up to somebody in Beard's here. If they want to move up, they would then possibly apply to the P36 position. That would be a cost center manager, and maybe on a team of people in the College of Engineering, like-minded people working as a cost center manager.
That's possible, yes.
And then maybe at some point in life, they would move back to reporting up to Beardshire and becoming a P37, 38 finance manager. Would you see that, the career progression? And do I have it all right?
I think that's possible. Yep.
So I might be,
oh, okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, Colleen. So I might be behind the curve, but I'm not getting this. Department versus college versus unit. How does a unit, are we just adding another layer?
No, we're trying to reorganize, restructure, so that finance folks, I mean, especially for the workday world, have the knowledge that they need to interact with the systems. So what we're trying to do is pull all the things on the right side that are currently within the college's departments, units, and pull them into a red team or to a finance specialist team to get them with a more consistent and broad knowledge of the things that are going on across campus so that they can handle those things in and hopefully a more efficient and manner.
Well, I manage one grant, and it's a massive responsibility to understand all those federal regulations. So you're going to ask a grant finance specialist to know more than one government agency? I mean, we already have that in SPA. In OSPA, they have certain, OSPA has certain colleges and departments, and you have your SPA accountant, which knows all these rules. So how is that? How many are you going to separate your grants finance specialists by like one or two government agencies?
Not necessarily. It depends on what the unit needs. So if the units, all of their funding is USDA, that person has to be fully understanding of all of the USDA requirements, as well as the uniform guidance. So they're going to have to be totally versed in USDA type of grant activities. But if you've got DOD over here, and you've only got, I don't know how many grants we have in DOD, but if we have many fewer grants in DOD, then they may have to do DOD as well as something else. But you may have 5 different grant specialists that are working on USDA, not one. You may have 5 or more on the finance side of it. Does that help? Does that not help?
I agree with the lady in the middle here. This is
Okay.
problematic.
Okay.
So as far as grant reconciliation, does that stay at the department level or, you know?
What kind of reconciliations?
Well, what we do in our department is, you know, we've got 80 or 100 grant accounts. And so monthly, I check the expenses with the statements, the transaction detail, and make sure everything is accurate. And then have a summary page that I fill out. And basically, I give the PIs a bottom line balance on their account. which would remove any indirect costs on the grant account, any encumbrances, any pending expenses, you know, and then they know they've got $10,000 to spend.
And I'm not sure of those right now. Which pieces might fall within the grant finance specialist? We still need to work through that.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. If accounts receivable is not going to be within Workday, at least for now, will fee-for-service agreements also be outside of the Workday environment? We do a lot of those.
So fee-for-service agreements, which piece of it? If it's got any accounting, it's got to be in the Workday system. But if you're talking for billing purposes and those kind of things, those will still go through accounts receivable.
Yeah. Okay.
All of our grant specialists are on grants. Will we be, and we use them as match on our grants, will we be able to?
Say that again.
Our finance people are all on our grants, either paid or match. Do you see these specialists reporting up to Beardshear being match on my grants, so I don't lose match?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we're working on that. The institutional budget management team is working on those aspects of it because we've heard a lot of that they're on the grants, and we've got to figure out a way to still do that. So, yeah. But that's one of the things that we are, that's one of the many, but that is definitely one that we don't want to lose.
Pam, you've said several times that you want the units to be right-sized to meet the needs.
Yes.
And then you said earlier today that HR and finance are going to try to match. Those seem to contradict each other.
We're going to match the unit descriptions. Okay, so if we have 12 units, the units will be identified the same. Okay, so that there'll be 12 separate units, if that's the number. Okay, but for unit 1, we may have a finance team of 25. For unit 2, we may have a finance team of 4. I mean, so I'm in my mind, right sizing is the units will be identified the same, but the teams assigned to those units will be different based on what the needs are of that unit. Does that help? Okay. Other questions? All right.
I think you got one more here, Pam.
Oh, one more?
I was late to the party.
That's okay.
It's typical. So within the unit, I know you haven't defined units yet, but within the unit, who's going to determine how many support staff members are needed to complete the work and at what level those are?
And those will be conversations with the units. So finance, UHR, and the units will be meeting to discuss their needs, what they need to keep in their units, the size of what they need to keep, the size that we, once we get there and talk. But each unit is going to be different. And so we're starting some of those conversations in December to just kind of, and start the conversation. What is it, how is this going to work and how are we going to implement this across the units? But each unit is going to be handled differently, in my mind. So, question back.
And will this grant, the finance specialist, work directly with the faculty, or is that up to the unit cost center manager?
In my mind, that's up to the unit on how they want it structured within their units. Because some of them are very, very specific, and they have certain things, that they've done for a long time, but we're just trying to pull that finance piece that is unique to Workday and trying to get them trained in those kind of things. And so we're going to try and work with the units to say, okay, how should this be structured?
Okay, thank you.
And it's going to be individualized basis.
Okay, sorry. This doesn't pertain to grant, procurement expense, any of those positions, but what about foundation accounts? How do they fit into this structure? We've got scholarship accounts that are foundation, and we also have faculty members that have research accounts that are under foundation jurisdiction.
They will be handled similarly to all the other types of accounts. They'll still have to be in Workday. We have a gift work tag, and we have a grants work tag, and then we have, what is it, institutional resource. That's one of the work tags, but all the things here for those type of foundation accounts would still run through the same process.
Ready?
Nice catch.
Will the charges for these finance specialist positions and the model be charged so say there's 12 units, are they charged evenly across the units? So you're just going to take whatever the charge is and divide that by 12, and that's what each unit is going to need to pay for this service?
And we haven't got that figured out yet, but I would say no. My initial inclination would be say no, because we're going to right-size those teams, and the teams will be right-sized for a reason. And so I can't imagine doing it equally, because we're not doing anything else equally, because those teams will be right-sized for what things you need. Nice. Any more? Okay. One more? Oh, behind you, one more.
So we're a center and we do a lot of the different things. How are centers going to fit into this, first off?
It depends on what unit they're defined with. So, I mean, centers will all have to be part of a unit of some sort. And I'm not sure how those units are being defined right now. We're working,
So
yeah.
when units are being defined and things are being determined, how do we get to have that input or get to contribute
we'll be
to
working,
it?
so, I mean, like you said, it's going to be individualized. So for all the units that will be set up, we will be working, finance and UHR will be working one-on-one with those units to figure out how those things need to be handled. And if your center is part of one of those units, or maybe, you know, like you said, I'm kind of out here. There may be a unit just for centers. I don't have a clue, but it depends on how those. Huh?
We do finance, we do purchasing. I mean,
I understand
do
that,
we,
yeah.
how are we going to run the center? Is kind of our question, I think.
Pam, is it fair to say that we will respect reporting relationships now? So if a center falls under the purview of the VP for research, or if the center is a part of a college, that we are unlikely to pull a center that reports to this college and put it in a service delivery unit that's over here? I mean, we will have some rationality.
I would hope so.
Yeah. I know it hasn't been decided yet, but that would make sense.
So is there a goal or a date in mind for when the units are to be determined?
Okay. These are all the slides I didn't get to and won't get to, but let's see. Identifying unit transition teams. I don't know that we got.
Outline unit alignment and number of associated roles.
Yep,
Right there.
okay. Fourth from the bottom, outlining the unit. So November, December timeframe for identifying the unit. Pardon? I know we are, but we have been working on it. And then, yeah. I know identify unit transition teams. I know HR has it slated for January. I think we'll be out earlier than that for finance, but we've got to wait until the units are defined before we can go out. Other questions? I have less than 15 seconds left, so. Yes.
You're gonna have to repeat that.
Can you stay within the department that you are at if you choose to go within the model for one of the financial services?
That is the goal.
Okay.
Yes. All right, well, my time is up. So thank you for for your attention. Thank you for your questions, and we'll keep sending comments to the website. It is, all right. Oops. And these slides, the full slides will be available on the website, but please provide any comments and more questions. I don't want to. Okay. Well, I can't answer.